Hey everyone, I'm Soorya Ramesh.
And I'm John Ravi, and you're listening to Two Brown Accents.
Today, the topic for the day is how did you choose your major? And I'm going to be asking John a bunch of questions to see what he did to choose his major. Okay, firstly, I want to get started off with an introduction. John here has done his PhD in computer engineering, and he did his undergrad, grad school, and PhD from NC State. And yeah, so that's the introduction. Is there anything else you that I missed out?
You're too kind.
Uh,
Don't stop, though. Keep going.
he's done a lot more. He really has. But let's get started with the topic for today. Um, why did you? How did you come up with what major to choose? Why engineering, John?
Hmm. Well, I think actually you had to go back a few years to
Mm-hmm.
understand why I chose engineering. Particularly, I chose computer engineering.
Okay.
So when my family first immigrated to America, I was 6 years old. We didn't have like a lot of stuff. When you travel, you only travel like two suitcases each person, right? So it's
Right.
like when you first come here, it's like not much stuff to do. Um,
Not to throw you off topic, but I wonder what a 6-year-old has in two suitcases. Moving on.
I mean, to be fair, I didn't get to pack my stuff, right? My parents packed it
Yeah,
for
yeah,
me, but it was probably just like clothes and stuff. I don't remember.
sure.
But my uncle and aunt, they already were in America for a few years, like a decade or so. And they live in Connecticut,
Mm-hmm.
right? So my uncle, he has a lot of hobbies. He's in the medical field, but one of the hobbies he has is video editing, right? Like
Okay.
this is before YouTube was a thing, right? So like he would like record weddings and like other stuff, right? And then so he would edit those videos. And computers back then, I mean, they're not as powerful as computers now. You just edit stuff in your MacBook. But then you need to like actually build a custom computer to do video editing, right? So he would make computers every few years because they were advancing so rapidly. So one of the years that we visited him after we came, he gave me one of his old PCs, right? So I was like, this is really cool, and it's a custom PC, right? So
So you guys drove back from Connecticut with that PC in your car.
exactly.
Okay, nice.
Actually, funny story. Like every time we go, every now and then, he gives another PC. This one time, actually, there was a loose bolt, and like when I turned on the PC, it didn't boot at all. Turns out I fried the motherboard because that loose bolt, like I think touched something, shorted something. So like that was really sad that trip because I was really looking forward to it.
Right, right.
But ever since a young age, right, I would like go and like mess around because things don't work, or maybe I swap out parts and put new stuff in there. So I feel like that curiosity in computers started because of that, right? My uncle. And then I joined different clubs in high school. I was in a robotics club, and I was really into programming. But I really did not want to go into computers because all the like uncles, Indian people in my community, they're all in the IT field, right?
Sure.
So I was like, I don't want to be like another typical Indian guy, right?
Brown people. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was like, I really don't want to do this.
Engineering and doctors. Those are the only two options available, huh?
Yeah, exactly. And then my parents didn't really put too much pressure on like exactly what you should be doing
Sure.
in life, but they would have preferred something that doesn't make money, right? But also I was really into computers. But then I was like, okay, I don't want to go into the IT field like everyone else is doing software. Like I would do like web design for my church back then.
Right.
So my like some of the people I talked to are like, why do you need to go to college? You can just like get a job at my company. And I was like, yeah, but like I feel like there's like so much more I can learn.
Yeah.
Like actually, because I like know how the like basics how computers work, like motherboard, hard drive, all this stuff.
Right.
But I want to like actually understand how those stuff is built, right? And that seems like you requires a 4 year degree. So I was like, okay, maybe like if
And
I
I mean, even if you knew things, it's like it's 4 years, right? You're gonna learn things you don't know.
that's what I was hoping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not you don't know everything. So
So like that's the reason why decided to go into computer engineering in particular because I thought okay like I kind of understand the software, like I know how to program like the pretty high level stuff, C++, all this
right.
stuff. I was doing that from a robotics club. We were doing like a vision processing for the robot competition that year. And it turns out actually that's the reason why I really wanted to get into a certain company, which I like that started way back then because we were using an NVIDIA Jetson. It's an
Mhm.
embedded system that does like an embedded GPU in there, which you can use to do vision processing, right? This is like
Sure.
2014, 2015.
Sure.
And I decided like, okay, if I do computer engineering, I get to go into this field and maybe I can get a job at NVIDIA. And like another thing that's going on back then was also like a lot of hype in AI.
Right.
I was taking AP psychology class, and my teacher back then, he was really into like how does the mind work, the human brain, and there was a lot of like a lot of movies that are coming out, like Ex Machina came out,
Mm-hmm.
and we actually took a field trip to go watch Ex Machina in high school.
Okay.
And it's just about like an artificial intelligence. This guy inventor makes it, and this other guy, programmer of this company, is testing to see if it can pass the Turing test. The Turing test is to figure out or not if this is a robot. But the
Sure.
Turing test is vague in the sense that you only chat with it over text. But this is like an advanced version of Turing test where like
Sure.
you know it's a robot, but can it convince you it's not just a robot? Like it
I
has
see.
the
It's kind of
information.
like captcha.
Okay, yeah, sure. It's like
Okay.
CAPTCHA. I'm not
Okay.
a robot, sure.
Sure. Okay. But yeah.
But so like I was like back then like if we can solve AI, right, artificial general intelligence, that's like the last invention humanity ever has to make.
Because then AI would continue to develop itself. Yeah.
Exactly, right? Like so I was like, okay, if I like I really am into computers, sure. But then like I had this like sense of like, even higher purpose. Because if I get into computers and I knew NVIDIA already was doing like, like ML stuff, right? Because
Sure.
we were kind of dabbling in this classifiers, image classifiers, because we were trying to identify what a trash can is in
Right.
robotics club. So I was like, okay, like this is like a very rudimentary form of AI, but like
Hmm.
this could evolve one day, right?
Sure.
So I was like, okay, like this technology is gonna be really useful, and I was really wanted to work on that, right? So like
Hmm.
I can work on things that will run this AI systems. So that's a long-winded answer of like why I chose that major.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Yeah, I think that was pretty elaborate. I'll move on to the next questions. Um, did you ever, when you were applying for engineering, did you ever think of job opportunities or like, like how much money you'd make? Like, did you think like, oh, what, this is like a very niche field or this is like a very, computer engineering is like there's a lot of jobs out there,
Yeah.
right? It's like, there's a lot of people who study computer science and there's a lot of jobs out there for computer science.
Yep.
It's like very versatile.
Yep.
So did you think about that stuff and the fact that, maybe if you had to move from one job to another, maybe you'd need a complete different set of skills versus like, yeah, it's coding, but like there's so many different kinds of
So yeah, this is a great
languages or like, did you think about like job opportunities back then or was it just,
this is a great question, right? So, like, I told you was really into AI,
yeah.
machine learning, and stuff. Um, I didn't really consider the money because
Hmm.
I knew, like, I knew general sense that like I will make money, like
Hmm.
enough to survive. It's
Sure.
fine. I wasn't really into the money, but I really wanted to do something that'd be very useful for society, right? Like
Hmm.
increase the quality of life, or even the quantity of
Right.
life too, right? So
Leave
when it
your name in history. That's what it
that
is.
would be ideal,
Hmm.
right? But
Yeah.
even if it's not, like I want to advance society
Right.
that's in a
Yeah.
useful way, and I
Yeah.
think technology is probably the best way to do it.
Sure.
And so I wouldn't really consider like job mobility and stuff. So like, I know a lot of people do think about this, like okay, like if I want to go into like web programming, I should learn JavaScript and this frameworks and all this stuff, right? But I don't think that's a great way to look at it. I mean, sure, if you're going to boot camp, like a 12-week boot camp, you should probably look at it that way.
Sure.
But when you're doing a 4-year degree, that's not a useful way to look at it, because when you take a computer science program, you're not actually learning how to make web apps, right?
Right.
Or website. You're actually learning the basics, right? Like exactly how the computers work from the bits to high level languages,
Yeah.
right? So if you can figure out the basic stuff like for loops, function calls, variables, you can basically get the like go between syntax of different languages, right? Like, sure, you can write Python, you can write C++.
Yeah.
There's subtleties, right? Like memory management in C++. Like, to be a good programmer in those languages, you need to become more involved in them. But if you just want to be a mediocre programmer and like pick it up in a few like minutes, you don't need to like really learn every language out there. You just need to learn the basics.
Got it.
So, no, go ahead.
So yeah, for kids in high school, right, when they're trying to think of what major to choose, you're saying that they don't necessarily have to think so far or so niche into what they really want. Just like a high level, hey, like I'm gonna learn all the basics, and then like I'm gonna figure it out as I get closer to that. Versus,
Yeah,
I'm not gonna think in like super optimized for one specific job, and then maybe like there's a lot of drawbacks, or maybe like that job is not in demand anymore by the time they finish it because you're not sure what happens 4 years. Is that what
yeah.
you're?
Well, so that's actually a really important point. So like, I was telling my brother. My brother is he just started his first year of undergrad, did mechanical engineering, and he was trying to figure out what he wanted to do in life. I didn't really. I got lucky. I was like, okay, I'm gonna do computer engineering. But I feel like when you're that young, you should like try to take a multiple experiences, as much experience as you can, right? Join a bunch of clubs like Science Olympiad, they have in America, right? But they have different like debate club, all like a lot of different stuff, right? And try to see what sticks with you, what really
Right.
connects with you. Like computers really connected with me, right?
Right.
And there could be other things like maybe someone was going to medicine, for example. Different things. So I think they should really look at that and before you get to even college maybe so that you don't have to waste time figuring out okay I want to switch majors like halfway through.
Right.
So if you can figure this out earlier, like in high school, try to experience as much experience as you can. I
Hmm.
think that's probably the best thing you can do.
Yeah, got it. For example, as a kid, I think I'm still a little scared of blood. So, like I knew being applying for a doctor, like applying to be a doctor wasn't really my thing, just
Yeah.
um but yeah, I get it. Okay. Now the next question is do you recommend a specific kind of do you want to bias our audience towards a specific kind of engineering or others? Because engineering has a lot of different fields, right? Mechanical, computer, electronics.
So that's a great question
Yeah.
too. I don't think it generally matters. There there is one engineering I would say not to do if you asked me 4 years ago. Um,
Also, this is like your subjective opinion, so you can go right ahead and
Well,
say
I mean,
whatever.
this changed recently, but like it was industrial engineering, right? There was this joke we had back in engineering college that it's like, okay, industrial engineers aren't real engineers, right? They play with stats and like Excel sheets. They're
Sure.
not really engineers. But I mean, that stuff does matter. Tim
Mhm.
Cook did his like degree in industrial engineering, right?
Right.
So I don't think it really matters what engineering field or even like it doesn't have to be engineering, right?
Hmm.
But I would suggest people do focus on things that add value to society and money, like it or not, is a good indicator of how much value you add to society.
I agree. Yeah.
So, like, majors that do offer like financial incentives to do it, like to actually contribute, I think that probably is something that kids should pay attention to.
Hmm.
That's my answer.
Okay. Okay. Let's get to the more trickier questions. Do you think if instead of being an engineer, if you'd chosen to be a doctor, a lawyer, maybe a musician, or any other career path, would your life have been better? Just something else, right? Like things would have been different for sure. Your life would have been on a completely different trajectory. Um,
I mean, I don't know how to entertain hypotheticals like that. Like, I don't think there
have
was
you
not.
ever have you ever thought about it, or have you
No,
ever
like
regretted
the
like?
only other thing I could have imagined going into is biomedical engineering. But the only reason I didn't do that is because like it seemed like really complicated and like humans didn't invent that field, right? We're
Sure.
only discovering what already is there, like
Right. Right.
biology. So like I decided to go to computers because this is something we invented. I can like go back 50, 60 years and figure out like the beginning of computer science.
Nice. Yeah.
So even that's complicated, but I feel like biomedical engineering is like super
No, yeah,
complicated.
I think it's much more easier to understand something that we came up with 60 years ago versus something that exists. So you kind of like have to understand it now or figure it
And
out.
theories could change, right? Like
Yeah,
what our understanding right now may not be understanding later. So exactly.
exactly. Okay, okay. Being an engineer, the way you look at the world changes, right? Because uh, I'm an engineer too. But let's say somebody's throwing a ball. Um, I feel like it's not as simple as oh somebody threw me a ball, I'm gonna catch it. It's more like oh what's the speed, what's the velocity. Like you do a lot of math. You're like oh if I change this variable, like the ball will go further. How to optimize for a certain thing, stuff like that. Being an engineer, the way you look at the world kind of changes. You start looking at everything as variables or algorithms and stuff like that. Do you think that's good or bad or anything? You know?
So actually had a friend who said this and I agree with him. He said that people who do engineering and then decide later become lawyers are really, really good lawyers.
Hmm.
I think the tools that we learn to think and reason and logic through different things using engineering is very important for not just our field, but also for other aspects in life. Right? A
Right.
lot of the engineers I know, coworkers, they're really into finance too, and they like look at the minute details to like save a couple pennies.
Right.
And like I think this kind of behavior is actually really important for a lot of things. I mean, not great for everything, right? Like I mean, typically engineers don't make good marketers. So like there's trade-offs,
Sure.
but I think it does apply to a lot of other things outside of just engineering.
Okay. Okay. My final question was going to be how how early did you start preparing? Preparing for entrance exams, or like how do you shortlist your colleges, or when did you start all the process for high schoolers out there?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm a bad example of this. Like, I mean, I have a PhD, right? But I actually didn't get into NC State when I first applied because I only started thinking about this like in 11th grade,
Hmm.
and now kids should start thinking about it in the ninth grade, right? Because like
Sure.
all those 4 years of high school matters when you're applying to college.
Right.
But I went to a Christian school because my parents are very religious. And only after that I realized like, okay, my particular school I went to, that Christian school, didn't have AP classes, advanced placement classes, so I can get like credit that actually matters to engineering colleges.
Right.
So like I was really behind when I after I transfers high schools because like all the other students already had like 6 or 7 APs, right? And I only had like 3 or 4 when I finished high school. So even though I felt like I was ready, on paper I didn't look I was ready, right? So it's okay though, because I have friends also who didn't start college off well, like first second year they didn't do well,
Sure.
but then ended up getting masters or even PhDs, right?
Hmm.
And like you can always turn it around. It's never too late, I think.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Also, I did do my high school in India, but significantly later. I started narrowing down colleges and stuff in 12th grade, and actually around the time I finished my board exams. Um,
I think kids should have a childhood, like they
yeah,
should they should enjoy life and not have to worry about like the rest of their life at when they're 13 or 14.
yeah. It's just pressure for no reason, right? It's
Exactly.
yeah, you're gonna figure it out. Just do what you like, and everything's gonna work out. Just definitely do put in some effort. Like think about it at the back of your mind, but
I think that's a good note to end on.
yeah, I think that's a good note. Thank you so much for your uh your
Sharing my
experience.
personal experiences,
Yes.
yeah.
I hope this helps our audience.
I hope so too. If you guys have any more questions and want to follow up, leave a comment below or even email us at twobrownaccents@gmail.com.
Yes. We will see you in the next one. Bye
Bye.
bye.